Today's daf is daf Pei Gimel. We are going to begin on daf Pei Beis Amud Beis, the last line, V'chachma Yavanas mi asiri. Gemara asks a question with regards to the Brisa. The Brisa said that it's prohibited to study Greek wisdom. So asks the Gemara, V'chachmas Yavanas mi asiri, is Greek wisdom prohibited to study? V'atanya, we learned in a Brisa, Amar Rabbi says, V'eretz Yisrael, in Eretz Yisrael, Loshin Sursi Lama. Why would somebody speak Syriac language? Oy Loshin Kodesh, Oy Loshin Yavanis. Either speak Loshin Kodesh or Greek language. And Rabbi said, Bava, why would people speak Aramaic language? Oy Loshin Kodesh, Oy Loshin Parsi. You speak Loshin Kodesh or Persian language. So what do you see? If you see that Rabbi Yehuda's statement is mashma, that there's nothing wrong with learning and speaking Greek. So the Gemara answers and says, Amri, the Chacham said, Loshin Yavani L'chud, the Greek language is one thing, and Chachmas Yavani is L'chud, and the Greek wisdom, that's something else. In other words, there are two separate issues. Speaking Greek, that's not a problem, but Greek wisdom, that's going to be an issue. That's going to be an issue. Ask the Gemara, Chachma Yavanis mi asiri, is the Greek wisdom itself actually asr? The pasuk says, "Eini eila l'nafshi mikol b'neis iri." My eye affected my soul because of all my daughters of my city. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel applied the pasuk to personal tragedy. Elef yiladim hayu b'beis Abba. There were 1,000 children in the household of my father Rabbi Gamliel. Chamesh meis mehem lamdu Torah. 500 of them learned Torah. Chamesh meis lamdu chachma Yavanis, and 500 of them learned Greek wisdom. V'nishtayru mehem ela ani, and they were all killed. All the Romans were killed, and the only ones that remained of them are I, who is here, and ben achi abba ba'aisya, and the son of my father's brother, who is in Aisya. So Rabbi Shimon Gamliel's statement is mashma, that is permitted to study Greek wisdom. So Amri, they said, Shani base Rabbi Gamliel sheyakrevim l'malchus. The household of Rabbi Gamliel is different, as they had close ties to the government. Since knowledge of Greek wisdom was crucial for the members of the family, the Chacham exempted them from the general decree. Kidetanya, and as we learned in a Brisa, Hamasaper Kaimi, somebody who cuts his hair in the fashion of a kaimi, a certain haircut favored by Gimel. A certain haircut that the Romans liked. This is considered the ways of the Amoraim, which is you're not allowed to go. B'chukas hagoyim. Aftulas bar Reuven hitir le'saper kaimi. This Aftumas bar Reuven, the Chachamim permitted him to get this kaimi haircut. Why? Because he has close ties with the government. Guys, come, it's interesting Gemara. Come sit. And the Chachamim permitted Rabbi Gamliel to discuss matters of the Greek wisdom. Why? Because he had close ties with the government. So we see when you have close ties with the government, then there's a heter for different learning chachma Yavanis, etc., etc. Okay, we're holding. The Mishnah says le'igadol adam asakelev elim kin kosher b'shalshalis. The Mishnah taught that a person may not raise a dog unless it is tied with chains. You're not allowed to raise a dog in your house unless it has chains on the dog. Tana Rabbana, we learned in our Brisa, le'igadol adam asakelev. A person may not raise a dog. You hear? You're not allowed to have a dog in your house. Elim kain kosher b'shalshalis, unless it's tied with a chain. Av magadolhu be'ir asmuch al asfar, but he may raise a dog in a city that is close to the border of the country. And he ties it during the day, and he releases it at night. Tanya Rabbi Lazar Eimer Hagadol, he says, "I'm a gadol klavim, a person who raises dogs, it's like he raises pigs. What's the practical difference of the statement? If both are usher, why are you saying kimegadol chazirim? So the answer is lemekim alei ba'oror, determining when one is chayiv to be cursed for it. Rabbi Elazar is saying that the same curse that we said by raising a pig is the same curse like somebody raises dogs. Amar Rav Yesi bar Minyamin Amar Rav Nachman Bavel ki'ir hasmucha l'sfar dami. Bavel is considered like a city close to the border, and therefore it's permitted to raise dogs there. Targema, Gemara says that in Bavel he interpreted Neharoi, it's referring to Nahardoi, a city that was close to the border. Dorish Rabbi Doistoi Demin Beidi. He says like this. In the connection to the bris, by Neach, it says Ubanucha Yem Shuva Hashem Nevavis Alfi Yisrael. When it rested, he said, "Return, O Hashem, to the myriads of the thousands of Israel." Lamdacha that teaches us She'ein Shechina Sheda Al Yisrael Pachas Mishnei Alafim Ushnei Nevoyos, that the Shechina does not rest upon the Yidden with a number fewer than 2,000 and 2 myriads. It's going to be where myriads is equal to 10,000. So myriads and 1,000 indicates at least 2 of each. Chaser achas, if they're lacking one individual from this total.
$200,000? 10 times.
Maybe 10,000. No, so what happened? There was lacking one, and what happened was so there was a pregnant woman amongst them who was fit to complete the number by giving birth. And what happened was a dog barked at her and she miscarried as a result of her being scared. So it comes out that the dog caused the Shekhinah to depart from the Jewish people. The Gemara says, there was a certain woman who entered a certain building to bake. Nefach be kalba, a dog barked at her. So Amar le Mara, its owner said to her, Loi tistafi minei, don't be afraid of it. Shkile nivei, I already took out the canine, the teeth, I took out from this dog. Amar le, so she said to him, Shkila tevusa v'shadi achira. Take your favors and throw them to the thorns. Why? Kvarnod v'lod, I already felt that I already had a miscarriage because of your dog. The Mishnah says, in person nishboyin liyenim, one may not spread out traps for pigeons only if it was performed at a distance of 30 ris, which is 8,000 amis from the settled area, to ensure that privately owned pigeons are not caught in that traps. The Gemara asks, Umi ozli kulei, do the pigeons really travel that far from the established places? Well, Tanan, but we learned in the Mishnah, one must distance a dovecote 50 amas from the city, so that the pigeons that settle in the cotes do not eat the crop that grow in the gardens of the city. This shows that the range of a pigeon is only 50 amas, whereas 4 mil is 8,000 amas. Rabbi, meishet shayet tuva, pigeons fly much more than 50 amas from their place. Kersaya b'chamisha amma malya, but their stomachs are full from the food they find within 50 amas, and therefore they do not eat any more beyond that range. Yeah. You're saying with regards to flying, it's only 30 years and no more. But Tanya, we learned the Yishuv in Yishuv afilu mea mil la yifres. One may not spread it out a trap for pigeons even a distance of 100 mil. Mashma that a privately owned pigeon might be trapped even 100 mil away from the settled area. So why then does the Mishnah permit trapping beyond 4 mil? Be'esav Omar Be'esav says B'yishuv Kramim. It's about a settled area where vineyards are grown. Since the pigeons rest in the vineyard as they travel, they're able to go a great distance. Rabbi Omar, we're talking about B'yishuv and Shivachin. The Rice is talking about a settled area where there are many dovecotes which they can rest from their flight. If there are many dovecotes along the way, let the Tana learn the Isser against setting pigeons' traps due to the dovecotes themselves, since the Mishnah teaches that it's also to trap pigeons. Within 4 mil of privately owned dovecotes, it should be irrelevant that there is a city 100 mil away. So the answer is either we're talking about dovecotes that belong to a goy, and the issur against trapping pigeons from private dovecotes applies only to a yid, not a goy. But the hefker, we're talking about the hefker, ownerless. Or you could say it's referring to the dovecotes that are his, that belong to the same individual who is setting the pigeon's trap. Hadn Allah Maruba, we have now, Baruch Hashem, completed Parak Maruba.
What is the problem with these Taibalach? They're eating up the crops in the fields?
No, we have the next element. No, you shouldn't get private pigeons that don't belong to you.
What's the purpose of it? What do you mean you're getting private? Because you want to.
Yeah, you want to chop them, but it doesn't belong to you. If it doesn't belong to you, you're taking somebody else's. All right. So now we're going to start the next perek, the 8th perek of Achevel. I believe, if my memory serves correct, from Achevel to the end of the Masechta is much easier. So we can take a breather and relax a little bit. All right, you ready? So the Heilige Mishnah, Achevel bechaveiroi. If somebody injures another person, he hits somebody and he injures him, so the Mishnah says, Chayav alav mishum chamisha dvarim. He has to pay, he has to compensate the injury with 5 types of payment. Number 1, benezek, with damage, b'tzar, with pain, b'ripoi, with medical cost, b'sheves, with the loss of livelihood, u'beishus, and for humiliation. And the Mishnah says, benezek ketzad, how is payment for damage assessed? Simei es einai, if one blinded another's eye. Kotas yadai, or he severed his hand. Shibes raglei, broke his leg. So the din is like this. The Beis Din views this person, the person who was injured, as though he were a slave being sold in the slave market. The Beis Din appraises how much he was worth before the injury and how much he's worth after the injury. And the difference between these two is the amount that the person who caused the damage has to pay. Now, tsar, how is payment for pain assessed? If one burned another with either like a skewer or with a hot nail, or even if one buried another with his fingernail, or a place where it does not cause a bruise that would affect the victim's value on the slave's market. The Beis Din evaluates how much a person is ready to, the pain threshold as a victim is willing to take in order to suffer this way, to suffer this way. And the one who burned the victim has to pay this amount. How much a person would be willing to get his hands burnt for a little bit, etc. Ripoi, what does it mean, the medical cost? What's that? If a person struck another person, he has to heal him. If where growths, in other words, let's say blisters or rashes, appeared on the injured party, if the growths are due to the blow, then chayiv, the one who struck him, is chayiv. And if the growths are not due to the blow, then pater, the one who's pater. If let's say the wound healed, and then it reopened, and then it healed again, and then it reopened, the one who struck him is still chayiv to heal the injured party by paying his medical costs, because of the current wound resulted of the original injury that keeps happening. If the injury healed fully, then the one who struck him is not chayiv to heal him by paying for any of the medical costs. Right. Now, what's sheves? What is the loss of livelihood? The Beis Din views the person who got hurt as though he were a watchman of cucumbers, and the one who caused him injury must compensate him based on that pay scale for the income that he lost during this time. We don't take into account the value of the standard wages of the injured party, because the one who caused him injury already gave him compensation for his hand or compensation for his leg, and that compensation took into his account of his professional skills. Right. Now, what's baishis? What's humiliation? It depends all on the stature of the one who humiliates the other and the one who is humiliated. Why does the Mishnah take for granted that the one who caused injury is chayiv to pay compensation for the injured party? The Torah says an eye for an eye, so you could say that you got to knock out the guy's eye, take it out rather than pay money. So, huh? Yeah. So the Gemara answers and says, "Loi solka daitach." Don't think this. Why? The Tanya like this. We learned in the Brisa. This principle in the Mishnah is derived. We have like this. The Torah says, "Ayin tachas ayin, eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a foot for a foot." It's like this. You would think one would have thought that if one blinded the eye of another, kotas yodei, misames yodei. Sorry, so you would think that if one blinded the eye of another person, the Beis Din blinds the eye as a punishment. Or let's say he severed the hand of another person. He has to sever the hand. He goes and breaks the leg. So maybe you have to go and break the leg. That's what the Torah says. That's what the Torah says, one who strikes a person, or one who strikes an animal. Just as one who strikes an animal is chayiv to pay compensation, monetary compensation, so too a person who strikes another person doesn't actually get an ayin tachas ayin, but rather he has to pay compensation. And if you wish to say that there's an objection to this, the Torah says, the Torah says, you shall not take ransom for the life of a murderer who is guilty of death. Which is only for the life of a murderer that you shall not take ransom. But you shall take ransom for one who severed another's extremities, which is an analogy to the death of a limb, as we know that severed limbs doesn't come back, doesn't regenerate. So the Gemara asks, "Hey Makeh," to which in the Brisa is referring to when it says one who strikes a person. If we say that the Brisa is referring to a case, one who strikes an animal shall pay its compensation, and the one who strikes a person shall be put to death. This pasuk is referring to killing, not injury, and there's no monetary compensation for killing. But rather from here, nefesh behemo yishalmenu nefesh tachas nefesh, nefesh tachas nefesh. One who strikes an animal shall pay its compensation, a life for a life. The samach lei, and next day, what does it say? Ish ki yiten musa misay, mumba misay. And if a man gives a mum to his friend, as he has done, so it shall be done for him. Hai lav makehu. So the Gemara says, but this later pasuk does not use the expression one who strikes, which is the basis of the comparison of the Brisa. So the Gemara answers and says, Hai lav, where am I? Hai lav makehu. The Gemara answers and says, Haka kamrinan. We are stating an analogy from striking to striking that is based not upon the exact phrasing of the pasuk, but upon the details of the halacha. Just as the striking that's stated with regards to an animal is the tashlumim, you have to pay for it. Afaka means the tashlumim for compensation. So the Gemara says, but the Torah says, one who injures another person and a man who strikes any person shall be put to death, which means that in the case of a person who hurts another person, let's say death of a limb, is done to the one who caused the injury, and he does not pay the monetary compensation. So the Gemara says, "B'mamin," the pasuk does not mean that the limb shall be put to death, removed, but rather it means you have to pay compensation with money. So the Gemara says, maybe it means actual getting to death. So the Gemara says, why not? Choda number one, we're comparing it to one who strikes an animal, you shall pay for it. But another thing, it says at the end, as he has given blemish to a person, so shall it be given to him. Ushma mina mamin. And we learn from here that it's referring to money. And what does it mean? Like there's a potential difficulty. You're saying that if you wish to say, and su kol kasha letanan, letana. So the Gemara explains this. The Brisa, it's an answer. Tu kol kasha letana. The Brisa means that a further difficulty was troubling the Tana. Why do you see that you're learning the principle of payment, the monetary payment, from the phrase one who strikes an animal? Why not learn it out from the pasuk of one who strikes a person shall be put to death? And learn that causing an injury makes a person chayav to receive physical retribution, which is an analogy to death and not actual payment. So my answer says, Amri donin nizakim in nizakim and donin nizakim in misa. So he says like this. We learn a pasuk concerning damages and the halachas of damages. Damages are derived from the pasuk concerning damages, and the halachas of damages are not learned from the pasuk of death. So the Gemara says, Adarab, on the contrary, why not say that the halachas concerning donin adam learn halachas concerning a person are derived from psukim of a person, and not halachas concerning a person are not derived from animals. So the Gemara says, this is what it means, and if you wish to say, Hari Eimer says, and you shall not take a ransom for your life of a murderer who is guilty of death, for you shall die. Which is, it's mashma that only if the life of a murderer that you shall not take ransom. But you shall take ransom for one who severed other extremities, for example, limbs that do not regenerate. So the Gemara asks, but isn't the pasuk you shall not take ransom for your life of a murderer? The comes to exclude in case of a person who severs another extremities from the Isra against taking kaifer. Sorry, this pasuk is teaching us that you shall not, you shouldn't give two punishments to him, which means do not take money from him and ransom and kill him. So my answer is Hai Mikdei Shasin Afka. This halacha is learned from according to the measure of his evil doing. In other words, that only one evil doing can you make him mechayev, but you do not make him liable for two evil doings. One cannot receive two punishments for the same act. So the Gemara asks, but you still needed the but the pasuk, it's still necessary to teach that one shall not take money and thereby exempt the guilty from being put to death. So the pasuk does not serve to exclude liability to pay damages from the Isra against restitution. So the Gemara answers and says, let the Torah say you shall not take ransom, and say for one who is guilty to death. Why does the pasuk need to say for the life of a murderer? So now we learn from here that a murderer that you shall not take ransom. But you could take kaifer, you could take ransom, one who took the ivarim which do not regenerate once severed. What do I need to have this pasuk of makeh? They said, because if not for this pasuk, you would say the person who caused damages, he could choose to give his eye, and if he desires, he could choose to give the value. So therefore, we learn from behema. Ma make behema means letashlumin for compensation. Af make means letashlumin for compensation. Okay, Tanya learned in Rabbi the story ben Yudoim ayin tachas ayin. When the potato says an eye for an eye, mamin means monetary restitution. Ata imer mamin in ayin mamish. You say that it means that he has to pay the victim monetary restitution, or maybe it's only teaching us that an actual eye. So he says, Amris, you say, Hare Amris, Hare Shahoiso, Eine Shozek, Deleve, Eine Shozek Tana, Hechani Kedeba Ayin Tachas Ayin. If what happens in a case, the eye, that one who caused the injury, is large, and the eye of the injured party is small. So how could that be an eye for an eye? One eye is small, one eye is big. And if you're going to say, and if you say that in all cases like this, where the eyes are different sizes, then the injured party takes monetary restitution. The Teda says you have one manner of the law, which means that it has to be one halacha equal to all of you. Exactly. So Amri, they answered, Ma kusha, what's the difficulty in saying that the eye should be blinded? Perhaps as the one who caused the injury took the sight from the injured party's eye. So that maybe the Teda states that the Beis Din should take the sight from his eye as well, no matter the size of the eye. Since if you do not say, then by the same logic, you can ask the same question. If a small person killed a large person, or a large person killed a small person, how do you kill the murderer? The Teda says you should have one manner of law, which means that the law shall be equal for all of you. So the punishment has to be the same for all murderers. Rather, explain that since the murderer took the life of the victim, he took the life of the victim, so the Teda says that the Beis Din should likewise take the life from him. Here too, the one who caused the injury, took the sight from the eye of the injured party. The Teda states that the Beis Din should likewise take the sight from this eye. Therefore, the Gemara does not accept how Rabbi ben Yehuda learns in accordance with the objection of the Chacham. Okay, we have a little bit more. We can go right there. Should we go a little bit more? Or we have to mind 10 minutes. Okay, Tanya Idach. We'll start in another brayso. Rav Shimon Yochai says, "Ayin tachas ayin." Teda says an eye for an eye, which means money. Atayim mammon in ela ayin mamish. Maybe it means an eye. Harei shahayasema v'sima kitea v'kita chigar v'chigar heichani mekayim b'za ayin tachas ayin v'ateda omer mishpat achas yelachem mishpat hashav lachem. Now l'cheda, there's a case where there was a blind person and he blinded another, or the one who had a severed limb and he severed the limb of another, or there was a lame person and he caused another person to be lame. In that case, how can I fulfill an eye for an eye? If you're going to suggest that it means mamish, money, if you say money, so that means one thing. But if he already is lacking the limb, then must be injured, how can you say ayin tachas ayin? The Teda says that you shall have one halacha, which teaches that the law shall be equal for all of you. So Amri, the Chacham said, Amai kusha, what's the question? Dilma heichad efsher efsher. In a case where it's possible to render the guilty party chayiv according to the punishment list in the Torah, it's possible, and the Beis Din does so. In a case, if it's not possible, then we exempt him. If not, if you're not going to say that punishing one and exempting another is not Teda achas, then you have the same question. In a case of one who has a wound that will cause him to die within 12 months, so if let's say you have a wound, in the case of one who has a wound that will cause him to die within 12 months, and who killed a healthy person, what do we do with him? Rather, you say like this. To a person, yeah. He said, it means he's going to die in 12 months. So Ella like this. Heicha de efsher efsher. In the case where it's possible to make the guilty party guilty, we say, yeah. Heicha de le efsher. Well, where it's not possible, le efsher, it's not possible, but we exempt it. Therefore, the Gemara does not accept, again, right, Rav Shimon Yochai, in accordance with the objection of the Chacham. Now the Gemara says another thing. Debate Bishmal Tana, he says like this. Amar Kra, the Pasuk says, Ki nasan boy. There it says, so shall be given unto him. Giving means money. So the Gemara says, when the Teda says, and he has given a blemish to a person, does this mean also refer to money? Yitin means that he caused an actual injury, even though it means giving. So why are you saying Yitin means giving? It means money. So Amri, he said, debate Bishmal, So Amri, the Beit Bishmal, Kra Yatira Darshi. The school of Bishmal are interpreting a extra pasuk. Michti, Ksiv Ish Ki Yitin Mum Ba'misai, Kasher Asa Ken Yasaloi. Torah says, and if a man gives a blemish to his neighbor, as he has done, so shall be done to him. Why do you need to have the pasuk of so shall it be given to him? So Shmamina, Mamin, must be Mami. So the my answer is I did by Michtav Ken Yasaloi because of Nami Kasher Yitin Ba'adam. Debate of Chiyatana, Amar Kra Yad Biyad. The Torah says a hand for a hand. Davarnitim Yad Liyad, which means given from hand to hand. What's that moment? Also means money. It's the teaching that the witnesses has to pay compensation when I didn't pass from foot to foot. So Amri, the Beit of Chia, Kroya Tira Kadosh, Michti, Ksiv, Basisum Nekasha Zom Lasses Lachav. Isok Adaydach Yad Biyad, Isok Adaydach Mamish, it means Mamish Kasher Zamam, so Yad Biyad Lamali, Shmamina Mamin, Regel Beregel Lamali, either because of Yad Biyad, because of Nami Regel Beregel. Now the Gemara learns another thing. Omar Abaya, Aisya Miditani Debei Chizkiya. Abaya says the principles derived from that which was taught in the school of Chizkiya. The Tana Debei Chizkiya, Ayin Tachas Ayin, Nefesh Tachas Nefesh, V'loi Nefesh V'ayin Tachas Ayin. Now, which means a life for a life, but not an eye, and a life for an eye. And if you think that it means literally, then Zin in the Mishkachas La'ayin and Nefesh Tachas Ayin. There could be times that you find a case where both an eye and the life are taken for an eye. The Bahadir, the Averlei, when the one who caused the damage is so weak that the Beis Din blinds his eye and Nafkalei Lishmasi, and his soul departs from his body. So the Gemara says, "My kusha dilma meimed amdinalei." Perhaps we evaluate the physical condition of the person. If he can withstand the punishment, then we blind his eye. And if he cannot withstand the punishment, then we do not do so, and he goes unpunished. Now, if we evaluate him and determine that he can withstand this punishment, if we evaluate him and determine that he can withstand this punishment, and we do so to him and blind his eye, and if he dies, he dies. The Milay Tanan Gabi Malchus, didn't we learn in regards to Malchus that Ma'amdu Meis Tachas, if the Beis Din now evaluated him and determined how many Malchus he could handle, and Lepoil he died in the middle, so Pater, the Beis Din is Pater. Okay, we'll stop here, Rabbi Zavid.